Welcome to Go Solo Live.
Don't you mean go solo live? Have you ever been asked why on earth would you travel alone? Go Solo Live not only answers that question, but celebrates life as a midlife solo traveler. This is a safe place for women to come together to reminisce about their travels, encourage others to travel, and to dig into the real lessons learned from these journeys. Now join Jennifer Buchholz with Transform Via Travel as she and her guests share stories of the solo travelers of midlife women.
Hello and welcome to Go Solo Live. This is Jennifer Buchholz with Transform Via Travel, and I'm so excited to be joined by my good friend and guest host for today's episode, Sarah Reed, as we launch into our 1-year anniversary special. And Sarah is going to interview me today. Welcome, Sarah.
Thanks, Jennifer. I'm thrilled to be here, and congratulations on your 1-year podcast anniversary.
Thank you so much. So I've given Sarah some free rein for how to make this happen today. And I trust that she is going to help me share my story, the story of my business, the podcast, and whatever else people might be interested in. Right now, we are also live on Facebook. I know this will be released in July, but I want to let folks know that you may hear some other questions that pop up if people are asking them while we're live on Facebook today, and we will try to entertain some of those questions as well. Are you ready, Sarah?
I'm ready, Jennifer.
Let's get started.
All right. Well, Jennifer, again, I'm thrilled to be here on your 1-year anniversary podcast. I would love to get started with a little bit about how you chose to start Transform Via Travel and thus start this podcast.
Cool. So Transform Via Travel was never intended to be a business until all of a sudden I realized that something that I had done for myself might be something that other people needed to do as well, and that they needed some help and support with. So
you kind of fell upon it by accident?
Probably not by accident.
Okay. Tell me more.
But by purpose.
Oh, that's intriguing. What do you mean by that?
I think what happened was I was at a point where I wanted to increase my entrepreneurial adventures.
Okay.
And I was looking for something different to do. I had some ideas. And then when forming those ideas a bit more, I knew that there was something deep down inside me that needed to come out. And I didn't quite know how to get it out to the world. There's no model for what I'm trying to do with Transform Via Travel.
Okay.
And in general, I call myself a life coach with a travel twist. But if anybody starts looking up the phrase travel coach, you're going to find buses.
That doesn't really
it just makes
what you're all about.
No, it makes me giggle.
Totally.
I'm not about the bus transport. I like it, but that's not the goal here. So I really had to spend some time figuring out, well, what does this look like and mean for me? I didn't want to be a travel agent.
Okay.
I didn't want to lead group tours as the main means of this business.
How come?
Anytime that I had looked at work in the travel industry, I had found that it was more work than it was about the travel.
Okay.
And
so it's not about you being lazy?
Well, you have to do the job, right? And it seemed like a lot of responsibility.
Fair enough.
And so I knew that I did enjoy travel, but I felt like I would lose some of the passion for it if my work were just centered around tour leadership.
And that doesn't sound like that's really your calling, your passion.
It's not, but I wanted to inspire people and support them as they figured out their own travel passions.
Sure.
So basically when I was 40, I hit a crazy point in my life and had some loss of relationships and loss of family members and pets and needed to figure some stuff out. And the way that I did that was through a solo trip in New Zealand.
That's awesome.
And I didn't know down the road, right, that this was going to be a business. But about 2 years after that, I sat down and I thought, well, what do I want to do most? And it truly was a purpose, a calling of there are probably a whole bunch of midlife women who were trying to figure out what was going to come next for them. And they didn't know how to do that. And I have found solo travel to be so inspiring and so freeing of the regular confines.
Yeah, I also think that it's such a cool vehicle for healing for
Yes.
people. And I've heard you talk about that. And I think that I really love that idea and concept. As a coach, like it's such a different way to experience something and to really engage and to tap and to trigger into different facets of yourself that you can't do when you're just, hanging out at the coffee shop nearby.
Exactly. And then have to go home and still do laundry and take care of another person or children or things like that. Mm-hmm. So it's this whole type of escape, but again, with a purpose. And so I just realized that if it was something so important to me, it might be important to others. And I started to explore that further.
Awesome.
And have continued to create and pivot and grow. And that's where we got started.
Awesome. So tell me, you're 1 year into your podcast. Did you start from the beginning with the podcast and Transform Via Travel? Did you do them at the beginning? Talk to me about that process. How did that go?
Well, what was funny was as soon as I knew that this was the business that I wanted to do, one of the things that occurred to me was the question that I got asked all the time when traveling, which is, well, why would you go alone? Don't you have a friend? Don't you have a boyfriend? Mm-hmm. Don't you have somebody who would be willing to travel with you? And that continued to astound me because people would look at me like I was the weirdest person in the world.
A little crazy. Well,
there is that, but
there's a little
different.
Bit of that.
So what I wanted to do from the get-go was actually to write a book with telling stories of midlife solo women travelers.
Awesome.
And I wanted people to feel like this is a normal thing.
Get them comfortable with the idea, understand how it could look and what it would feel like. Totally.
And other people do it like all the time, mm-hmm. but it seems so strange. So it's not something that gets talked about a lot. Mm-hmm. And so I started down that path.
Okay.
And then somebody said, if you write a book that's compilation of stories, you're not establishing yourself as an expert. And at this point in your business, you need to be the expert.
Interesting.
It was really heartfelt advice, very meant to help me out. And I'm like, okay, then I need to look at it differently. And so that's when I shifted directions a little bit and just put that to the backside. And I wrote my book, got that published.
What's the book called?
The book is Go Solo, A Savvy Woman's Guide to Transformation and Self-Discovery Through Travel. It's a little bit of self-help woven in with my story.
Where can we find it?
You can find it on Amazon.
Or I had to do the plug. She gave the lead in right there.
Right there. It's on Amazon or it's on my website at www.transformviatravel.com.
Did you hear that? www.transformviatravel.com.
And you'll see where to find that at the end of the show as well. But once that was all done, it was still important to me. One thing to share your story.
Once the book was all done, right? So the book was all done, right? Okay, still important to you.
So it's my story.
Awesome.
That's great. Mm-hmm. But I'm still just one person.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't showing this normalization of the trend of solo travel. And at that point, the facts were showing Yahoo Travel, which is probably no longer anything anymore.
No, good point. I didn't even think about that.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
But Yahoo Travel statistics were showing that the most popular and growing trend in American travel was solo women travelers. And their average age was 57.
Oh, that's fascinating.
Right? You think
really
it's that younger generation is truly people who are hitting that point of freedom in their life and then they get to go explore.
Yeah, awesome. Kids are through college and they can go off and do what they want. Totally.
Exactly. And they're ready and they are financially able to do it. It's exciting. So that just continued to affirm that there's a population out there doing it. And I wanted them to feel more normal.
Makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm. So my whole point of starting Go Solo Live, Go Solo Live, and there's a little play on words there for that very reason, is to normalize the idea that a lot of women travel solo. Married, not married, kids, no kids. It doesn't matter.
I think that's interesting you say that because I think oftentimes when people think of solo travel, it's because you're alone, you have no kids, you have no husband, you might be a loser. I'm sorry, but I think that's what sometimes people think when they think of traveling by yourself. The woman over in the seat, oh, I feel so bad for her. She's sitting by herself, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Right. It's like a little pity thing.
Yep, totally.
And you can see that, that is something that people feel out there. However, that isn't necessarily the real experience. And that's what the whole intention of this podcast was to show, is that I have interviewed people of all different ages, of many different race and backgrounds, many different marital statuses, all of it. And the stories all consistently ring true that maybe they knew in the beginning that it was going to help them, or maybe they discovered that later. But the reality is that it didn't matter what their background was. Solo travel is an important part of their life. And it was, once it happened once, it was going to happen again and again.
That's awesome. That's fantastic. So tell me what you've learned from the podcast thus far. What's it taught you?
One of the biggest lessons that continues to arise is that the confidence that people get and in themselves as they travel solo, I don't think is really measurable, but it continues to show how they can flourish because there is this idea of how much self-sufficiency they'll have.
What they're really truly capable of.
Oh my gosh. And through some of this, it's the idea to pursue their passion. Sometimes they have to get creative. A lot of reconnecting with their internal, like trusting their gut, trusting their heart.
That's a big deal.
Well, because there's so much noise. And I think if you listen to some of the stories, you're going to see how much noise people are buried in.
Completely. Yeah.
And the idea of travel, just travel, is very freeing. And then that idea of solo travel, meaning you don't have to take responsibility for anyone but yourself. It's a whole different layer of freedom. And the more that you pull off all those layers, the more easily you can connect with your guts.
Yep.
And everything can blossom
Your
from
guts.
there.
I'm sorry. You
Your
said guts.
I said guts. Your heart.
Your guts, your intuition, your guts. I liked the plural
There's
version.
a lot of guts.
Yeah. It
I
just
have
gave
more
that
than
much
one
more
gut.
oomph.
Do you have more than one gut? I don't know.
I'm
not talking about that.
That's not for this podcast.
Different.
Yes. All right. So tell me, I think you not that long ago led some women on their first solo trip. Talk to me about that experience and what you learned in hosting it, as well as what you saw them take from it.
You know, the Go Solo Live Challenge weekend it went exactly as I had hoped for everyone, and in a way that I probably could have never planned.
How so?
You know, when you're planning an event, you do a lot of work to make sure that it's done right. And
logistics and those sorts of things.
So many details.
Totally.
And then in the end, you just have to let go and let the people have whatever experience they need, because they will craft and create that experience to best suit them. And so that's part of the gift of going with the flow and some of that stuff. So what I learned from doing it is that when you create an environment for people where it's safe for them to explore and share, they're really willing to open up and not only explore, like exploring the city, but exploring themselves a little bit deeper. And I think that was my biggest takeaway, is that sometimes, again, it's not really always about where you go. And it doesn't have to be a big, huge, fancy trip. Is that what you're saying? It doesn't have to be a big, huge, fancy trip. I think we can probably talk more about those ideas in a minute. The idea of that people are willing to do the self-exploration. And once you open up yourself, your view of wherever you are changes a bit as well.
Oh, sure. It's like you put different glasses on.
Exactly. You're looking at something from such a different point of view because you're in a different place. And again, I would say that for many women, that place is this place of nurturing and caring for others. And there's been times where I've talked to women who are ready to embark on their first solo travel, and we talk about, well, what kind of food is your favorite food? It's been so long since they've actually discovered that for themselves because they've been compromising for everyone else.
They don't even know.
You
Yeah,
can relate
totally.
to that.
Yeah. I've had clients that's been a thing for, is like, I don't even know what pizza I like, because they've been accommodating or people pleasing and looking to help others as opposed to themselves for so long.
And it sounds like it's such a minuscule thing, but I use that example all the time.
Totally.
Because if you're given the choice to go anywhere to eat something, where would you go and what would you eat?
Mm-hmm.
And if you're sitting there right now listening and you can't think of the answer to that question, I encourage you to take a minute and explore.
Yeah, totally. Great first step. Mm-hmm.
Right? And it doesn't mean you have to go dine alone at that place if that's not something that you're interested in. But then advocate for yourself to say, hey, I really want to go do this. Who's in?
It's like taking the lead for yourself for the first time.
Absolutely.
It's a little tiny baby step that you can do.
Absolutely.
Love that. Mm-hmm.
And Sarah's background is that she's working with a lot of people in a corporate coaching environment, and I'm working on more of the personal side, and we still run into the same stuff.
Yep, all the time.
It just manifests differently, and you'll see, this stuff that people are working through at work, those same folks would benefit from solo travel. Mm-hmm. And the folks who are coming and saying, oh, I want to do this travel, they probably need a little coaching related to work.
Mm-hmm. It's true. Yeah, I always say that you don't go into work or home two separate people, right? You're all one being coming into whatever environment you're going into in the same way. And it's unrealistic to think that you can parcel those pieces out and deal with them one at a time.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. No. And when people try to do that, they're not taking care of their whole self either, and I've been there, when I worked in corporate.
We all been there. Totally.
But I think the biggest takeaways that the people who attended got was it actually reconnected them with some of the things from their past.
Oh, that's cool.
Oh my gosh. It was wonderful because as we started talking through and doing some of the journaling exercises and some of the group exercises, one of the women said, I think I've traveled solo before.
That's awesome.
I'm like, what you talking about? Because
tell me more.
We had spent some time talking and this had never come up, and I'd known her for a bit. And she says, oh, when I was in college, I backpacked around Europe.
And isn't that interesting? She totally locked that away and forgotten.
That's what was so revealing, is that the spirit that we have when we're doing that, as you take on normal societal roles, a lot of those things just get boxed up and put away. And it literally is doing some unpacking within yourself. And when that emerged, her face lit up, her eyes got brighter. Wow. Like you could see.
That's amazing.
You could see her going through the memories of like, I've been brave before.
Oh, that's so powerful.
Even better, she's doing her next solo trip in Europe this summer.
She is? Wow. That's incredible. Incredible.
It just makes you realize that, we need to take time for ourselves. And I know people do a spa day, or there's a lot of different ways to do it.
That self-care piece, yeah.
But like taking the time to explore within, that's where the journaling comes in. That's where being away from home so it can be all about you.
Yes.
That's where it comes in, because otherwise you don't get enough time to go deep. You can take one layer off, but you don't get that deep.
And I think it's hard to turn the voices off, right? Or the duties off, or the to-do list off.
The shoulds.
You cannot write the shoulds. It's hard to, in a 50-minute massage or a 30-minute pedicure, to really tune in and see what you have to say.
Yeah.
And not what other people have to say or what they want.
And that's why no matter what you're doing in terms of self-care, I really do encourage like having a strong purpose and intention for that. We talked about the healing power of solo travel.
Absolutely.
But to go with a specific purpose for working through something, it can be a real game changer for, I'm not going to say shortcutting that path, but by
amping it up.
Totally. As well as, I have a friend who works in this business in a similar fashion, and it's Michael Sherman who wrote The Zen of Solo Travel. And the way that he puts this part is it's about an unanswerable question. And it's really a good idea. It goes along with my concept of purpose and intention, but the way that he calls it is just to go in with this idea of, I am seeking guidance on. I need some help to figure out. And having that become this mantra, like that you have in the back of your head is, I am open to receiving,
possibilities,
this,
what
right?
comes in. Absolutely.
And it can't be that broad. You have to be like focused and honed in, not just like, I want to heal, but really dig into what is going on and what you're hoping for. And time after time, when people are going in with those unanswerable questions with a purpose and intention, the universe is providing answers. But so often when we're caught up in our shoulds and in our day-to-days, we are not going slow enough to receive them.
Totally.
And so with the solo travel, it's an opportunity to get a little quiet and to be open to hearing them and to then make choices about actions related to that.
So how did you help encourage your group to do that?
There was a lot of journaling.
Okay.
There was a lot. So we would do some conversation activities and thought-provoking activities.
Awesome.
And then time for reflection.
Okay.
Because each person is there for a very personal reason. And again, what we're doing is a bit about the travel. So we do spend some time talking about, the logistics of some of the travel, but it's more about what's going on with you. And so it involves some group conversation, journaling, and then sharing. And the power of being in a community of supportive women who are open to whatever you're sharing and just ready to be supportive and help, again, is very powerful. You know that you can go solo, but you won't feel alone.
That's fantastic and really, really powerful. So tell me, what's next on the horizon for Transform Via Travel and this podcast?
Great questions. So as we're reaching our 1-year anniversary, we are launching a Patreon site to encourage patron support of the podcast.
Okay. For those of us that don't exactly know what that is, will you explain, please, Jennifer? So for those of us that don't know what a Patreon site is, can you explain it to us?
I didn't think that anybody wouldn't know that. And then I realized that, yes, there's a lot of people out there who don't know the word I just said. So I apologize, and I'm glad Sarah's here to catch me.
Patreon. That's what it is.
Patreon. So think of it like a patron site, which means those who are patrons of the podcast, those who listen to the podcast, can have an opportunity to share their love and support financially to support the ongoing efforts and costs of recording a podcast and producing it each week.
Oh, very cool.
So I'll be sharing a link in the show notes, but it's actually Patreon. So PATREON.com and then Go Solo Live.
Cool. So is there something special a Patreon member would get versus someone who just listens to your podcast on iTunes or Google Play?
Absolutely. So Patreon is really just the financial support. So you're still going to download the podcast through iTunes or Stitcher or Google Play.
Gotcha.
But you can go in and be a subscriber. And then for example, for the low price of $3 a month, which every little bit helps, your donation gets a thank you note from me and access to a patrons only comments section on that site. So can give you a little bit more interaction with me if that's something that you want. And then there's other...
Don't we all want more interaction with Jennifer? Come on. She's so delightful.
Well, the next level is the $10 feeling the love. So then you get a little bit more love.
Gotcha. Yeah, can you get a
level.
hug in that one?
Well, maybe a hug. A virtual hug. Oh, goodness. You're going to amp this up a little bit. Actually, at that level, you get a copy of my book digitally. So that's as good as a hug, right?
That's a hug. I'd say that's better than a hug.
Absolutely. And we have additional levels, some of which include some hotel savings discount cards and even more one-on-one access with me to answer questions and things like that. Okay. So there's a variety of ways to show your support, and in thanks for your effort of doing so, then I'm willing to certainly interact more and share a little bit more love that way.
That's really cool. And they can find all that information on the Patreon site.
They sure can. And
Okay.
I'll put that in the show notes as well. So you'll have a way to find me, find the podcast on Patreon, and share any love and support that you have. Right. But we always are looking forward to feedback as well. So, any reviews that are posted are always appreciated. But I think you also said what's coming up next for Transform Via Travel. So
I did say that. Thank you.
whew, it's a lot of work being a guest and a host.
Yes. I'm slacking on my duties here.
So Transform Via Travel is excited to announce that this summer I'm launching an online program called Get Ready, Get Set, Go Solo. Woohoo! And the objective of that program is to answer the question that I see out there all the time. And if you can relate to that, send me a little love telling me that you can relate to that so I can help craft the program to meet any needs that you have. But the problem is, I want to travel solo for the first time and don't know where to get started.
So is it like a how-to guide? Tell me a little bit more.
Well, so in the Get Ready part of the program,
Okay.
we are actually using a systematic process to determine your first solo travel destination. So by the time
Is that often a thing for people? Do you run into that a lot?
It's
Not
funny
where?
because it's like some people just have no idea where to go. When the world is available to you, where do you go?
Too many options.
Too many
Okay,
options.
sure.
And then you look at, okay, the top 10 bucket list destinations for solo travelers, or, okay, well, there's 10 places to go. And what we haven't found anywhere yet is a comprehensive list of cool places to go, because what I want to help people do in that step is to create their bucket list. So I provide some tools for that.
Nice.
But then I help them work through the process to narrow it down.
Okay.
So by the time that they're done with that step, they know exactly where they're going.
Okay.
And it's within budget and it's within their time constraints and things like that. So then the get set step is to dig into that destination a little bit deeper and figure out things like money, language, packing, security, things like that. And then the go solo step is my favorite step because it's all about your purpose and intention for travel and that self-exploration part of it.
And the more heart-centered part of it.
Exactly. But people can go through that program in a week if they want, or they can take a month.
So it's all self-guided then?
Self-guided, but it's intended to help give that whole system of how to make that decision. Because it can be super overwhelming.
Yeah.
And
there's no different when you go on the internet and you're searching for one thing and then something else pops up and you get over there and you get distracted by this. It's really
your
hard
squirrel
to stay
moment.
Totally.
Right? So we're trying to avoid the squirrel moments and take you through step by step. And even better, it's a repeatable process. So some of the things that you've put together, you'll be able to use over and over again. And you'll have your list of all the destinations that you want to go explore. So I'm super excited about that.
That's really exciting.
The video, we just finished recording all the video for it yesterday.
Wonderful.
And so that's launching at this summer in time to help people still plan trips before the end of the year.
So will it be out by the time your podcast launches or this gets aired?
No.
Okay. All right.
This is
stay tuned, folks.
Yes. So we hit our 1 year anniversary for the podcast in July, and I would say that the online program launches before September.
Okay. Wonderful. Things for people to look forward to.
Absolutely.
That's great. So tell me, you're a year into the podcast now. Are you doing any changes? What's coming up next for the actual podcast? What can listeners expect?
Great question. Well, one of the biggest changes that we made is that we went from a twice a month format to a weekly format before we even hit our 1 year anniversary.
What made you decide to do that?
So many stories to share.
Okay.
I was really finding that there were so many guests out there who had amazing stories. And the stories that I look for are not only the stories of where'd you go, because that's really hard to envision on a podcast. Like to say, oh, I saw the Eiffel Tower. Well, we can all probably like picture in our mind something of what the Eiffel Tower looks like. But this just wasn't meant to be just a where'd you go podcast. And
not about the attractions and the scenery. It goes deeper than that.
Yeah. And so what we started to find is that all these people were coming forward with these stories that everybody wants to talk about their travel. And so many women want to support other women in solo travel that twice a month wasn't going to be enough to cover all the stories. And if my mission is truly to normalize this, at least once a week is what I want to be doing.
That's fantastic. Anything else you anticipate shaking up again in this second year that you're broadcasting?
So I do see some themes coming on, and I may start to bring in different people. I've had many people with health focuses.
Oh, interesting.
That want to share kind of their take on health and travel.
Mm.
A variety of examples. Some are health coaches for people over 50,
Okay.
and they want to talk about how health and travel all interweave at that age group.
Interesting.
Even examples of like an essential oils for travel type of thing.
Mm.
So we have a lot of ideas out there, and I'm always open to more ideas and feedback. So I'm once again inviting the listeners to reach out to me. You can find me at the website at www.transformviatravel.com.
www.transformviatravel.com.
Or certainly you can email me. You can find me out there. We're on Facebook. We're on Twitter. You guys know how to connect. And I'd be honored to hear from you. Again, I'm always looking for more guests with great stories to share. But if there's something specific that you want to hear more about, of course, we like talking about safety and security.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that continues to evolve
Sure.
in our current climate. But it's really just more of making sure that the stories that need to be told are out there.
Yeah. And what I like, because I feel like you focus a lot on that, the emotional purpose portion of travel. But what you're talking about now is adding in, okay, here's another trick, or here's another tool or resource on top of that might make someone feel more comfortable about going, another level of how they can proceed. So that reminds me, what do you see people get most afraid of? Like, what do you see? Do you see a pattern of what prevents people from moving forward, or the fears that come up in doing this, or the themes that you've seen on the podcast and people you've talked to?
So we, of course, see the whole range. And what I like about this work is that there are some people who are going to be the baby step people.
Mm-hmm.
And so I talk to people about how you can travel solo in your own backyard, and going out to dinner alone, going to a movie alone, going on a cabin weekend retreat that's drivable. You don't have to do the entire Eat, Pray, Love experience to get started, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds fun, but it's a big investment. And if you hate it, that's not great.
Mm-hmm.
But that's one of the trends that I see, is that, starting slow and working up to it. And then I see the leaping in with both feet.
Well, kind of like the woman that you said went on your trip, and now all of a sudden she's going to Europe.
Absolutely. And so what I also look for I think we were talking about the security as well, is, every single person has said their family has raised some concern or another about them traveling solo. And it really didn't matter how old my guest was when we talked about that.
So 22 or 52?
It didn't matter.
Okay.
And it was really like, again, why would you do that? Why would you go alone? Aren't you weird? And that's coming from their family. And the tips that you get from these folks who have done anything from, a trip to a spa in Minnesota to trips to, I was going to say Kabul, but that's not where I was talking about.
That's interesting.
That's where I was looking at going, but I'm not. So that's why that came up, right? Like that was sorry.
I'll keep my thoughts to myself. Yes, continue.
Right. So various trips to Middle Eastern countries. The thing that keeps coming up is use your common sense. Be aware. Don't get in a situation that you can't get yourself out of safely. And that's always been my biggest fear for people when they're traveling solo, is that they feel this sense of exhilaration and freedom. And therefore, in some ways, I think it makes them feel invincible, which is a wonderful feeling, but it's not reality. And so
within some safety parameters.
Right?
Sure. Yep.
And so that's why we will continue to have a conversation. Anytime safety stuff comes up, I take a moment and dig into it, because I want people to remember that we're not bulletproof. And it's so important that, in order for us to have the proper growth experiences, that we're going with that purpose and intention in a positive way, and not to go numb, and not to
Tell me about the numb.
You got to think, like, there's a huge difference between traveling solo for the sake of self-exploration and exploring the world and running away.
Oh, okay. So tell me more about that.
So I think there are people, and I've experienced this myself, that sometimes you just want to get away from whatever that mess is. And oftentimes we think that mess is at home. And then we find that when
it's attached to your back and it comes with you.
And it does. It always comes with you in one way, shape, or form. Or if it doesn't come with you and you can go and you can numb, and numb can be a variety of ways to do it. It might be a spa. It might be, you might be over drinking. You might be overindulging.
Alcohol did enter my mind.
Yes. Right. So there's the literal numb and the figurative numb. But no matter what, when you come home, you're always coming home to you. And having gone through an experience like that, I called it my re-entry trauma when I went away. And before my first big solo trip, I did a numbing trip, but I didn't know that that's what it was at the time until I came home. And I was in my re-entry trauma was basically crying 2 flights home until I met a heaven-sent man who actually leaned in at the airport and when I could not stop crying. And he asked me if there was anything he could do to help. Like, this was a dude in sandals and cutoffs and tattoos and scruffy face and just, you look at him like, really? Like, you're the guy who's leaning in right now?
Like, universe, that's who you sent me?
Right? And I'm like, wow, but he leaned in, so I have to make a request. So can you make me laugh? And he went on to tell me stories. And we wound up sitting next to each other on the plane. We were assigned seats. We were assigned seats next to each other. Yes, we were.
That's incredible.
And then come to find out that this amazing man had recovered from PTSD.
Wow.
Had survived a military experience. And he was coming back from spending a weekend helping others cope with PTSD.
Wow. That gives me goosebumps.
It was insane that's that person. That's why he leaned in. He knows. He knows trauma. He knows healing. He knows numb. And that's the person that was sent to me when I needed it.
Wow.
And so again, sometimes when you're just open to those experiences. So I just think, like, again, we have this, we were talking about that idea of invincibility. And it is a coping mechanism. I do not recommend it. It's escapism. Sometimes it's necessary, but if you're going to go and try and be numb, I don't encourage you to go solo to do it.
Yeah. So you said that you took the trip and you didn't really know that it was that trip. How can you, or what can you share with people to help them understand that so they don't get in that trap? Is there something?
That's where that whole mindset that I had of purpose and intention.
Okay.
That's what really, like,
that's where
spending time knowing your why.
Yeah.
Right? Because once I had gone on that trip is when I realized that I did it wrong.
Oh, okay. Sure.
And that's when I went to New Zealand. I had a plan. I did some homework. I took some books. I took some music. I took some things that I knew that I needed to do some of the work that I needed to do to heal if I were to come back from that trip different and better.
Yeah. Not crying on both legs of the flight back, looking for your savior in the airport.
Right?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
That's great. That's great. So in addition, I'm going to back up for a second. When you were talking about being numb and those tools, is that going to be part of your program? Is that built into some of that why? Or is that more like the step before? Talk to me about that. Is that more the step before? Talk to me about that. I was not close enough to the mic. My apologies. Those of you listening.
So that's in the go solo step.
Okay.
So I mentioned at the beginning of the program, and I mention it in planning, like the very first steps. And then I say, hang on to the end.
Yep.
Because our purpose and intention is not necessarily tied to our destination.
Oh, sure.
They really can be two separate things. And so I think that we can pursue that purpose wherever we go, as long as we have the intention to do it.
Yeah.
So that's why, and a lot of people, I find it to be a chicken and egg kind of thing.
Okay.
So I let people who feel the need to have the where figured out first.
Okay.
We start there because it's tangible.
Yep. Yeah, it probably depends on how you're wired and just how you tend to think through things outside of even travel and how you usually plan and are thoughtful about that.
Exactly.
That's great. That's great.
Yeah.
So you're going from bi-weekly to weekly on the podcast. You've rolled out the Patreon site. You're launching your online program. You got a lot going on.
We do, and it's been a very exciting time so far. You know, Transform Via Travel is just under 2 years old, and we continue to figure things out and grow. I'm super excited because I'm also going to be a guest speaker for the Women Traveling Together 20-year celebration in October in New Orleans. And that's an organization that truly supports this concept of solo travel.
Sounds totally in alignment with what you're doing.
It's so exciting to have had the opportunity to work with Deborah and her team as they put together, I think she said, over 80 trips for 2018 for women who are interested in traveling solo, but going with the support of a group and not having to do all the planning on their own.
Yeah, and there's some people that want to do that, but don't have the time or the desire or the wiring to be able to go through all of that. That's fantastic.
Exactly. So there's so many great options out there. And the best
so when are you going to be in New Orleans again? Can you say that one
I'm going to be there the first weekend in October.
Okay.
And that's the Women Traveling Together 20-year celebration.
Okay.
So
can they Google Women Traveling Together, I'm guessing?
I'm sure they can find that in my show notes. And I think there's only a few tickets left, though.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, Wonderful. It's exciting. They've been doing a great job building this event. But Women Traveling Together, again, is an organization that I think is just doing the best thing for some of our solo travelers. And it's a U.S.-based company that is one of a kind.
That's great.
In this country. So I'm excited.
So you're going to New Orleans this fall. What else is coming up for you? Aren't you going on a ship somewhere?
So I also am a speaker on the Women Making Waves cruise leaving out of Galveston. Actually, right after, as soon as I leave New Orleans, I'm going to Galveston to jump on that cruise and speak about women traveling while networking.
Never a dull moment for you, is there, Jennifer?
No, it's good stuff. But it's so exciting to be able to share this message. And I'll tell you, this work continues to evolve and grow. And I don't always know where it's going, but it's exciting to be a part of it.
That's awesome. So what else is coming up for Transform Via Travel outside of those speaking gigs? What do you see as next on the horizon beyond the online class? Do you see yourself taking more trips?
So I think that's what the best part of this is right now, is that in so many other businesses, there's an existing model to follow. We're making the model as we go. And so that's where it's great to engage with some of my clients, engage with people of interest, and find out what they want. Through the Get Ready, Get Set, Go Solo, we're building a community. And if the community says, okay, we're ready for a group trip, we'll do a group trip. You bet.
Okay.
But right now, I think we're going to focus on really making sure that that online program is all it can be and serving the people who are a part of that, and then bringing everybody else along as we need to.
What's been the most surprising thing as you've gone through this journey with Transform Via Travel and the podcast?
It's funny because I belong to some other podcasting groups that exist, and there's a lot of people who are hesitant about launching the podcast or, how they get started. This for me is one of my favorite ways to interact with people, to, share stories and things like that. I'm in love with sharing the message in this manner. But don't go looking for a blog from me, because that is few and far between.
Well, I remember when you launched the podcast, you're like, I'm launching a podcast. I'm like, okay, she's on it.
Yeah.
And it was done.
And, now I don't worry about like my listener numbers. I always want more listeners, of course. I want people to love it and tell me what I could do to make it better. But this is truly just about getting those stories out there. And the best thing about podcasting is they really never go away. So that's great. But
then people can binge listen when they find you.
I know. I'm almost like Netflix that way.
It is. I like it.
It's so weird. But otherwise, the other surprise is that I am finding that there are so few people trying to do this work in this air quote travel coaching area, that because I'm out and about connecting with people, I'm finding them and I'm connecting us together. And every single one of us is doing interesting work, but we're doing it in such a different way.
Coming from your own vantage point.
So I love that because I feel like we're a group of trailblazers, but we're not following a cookie cutter path.
That's great. And that so aligns with how you operate as a person.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, Jennifer, it has been a pleasure. Thank you so much for sharing your vision and purpose and ideas for what Transform Via Travel is all about, the history, the why, and thank you so much for letting me be a guest and helping you share in this 1-year anniversary podcast.
Thank you for your help today, Sarah.
You're welcome.
Well, sisters, we've reached the end of today's episode, and we've now completed our 1-year anniversary. Remember, I want to connect with you. Find me on Facebook at Transform Via Travel, or follow us on Twitter at Go Solo Live. Please make sure to invite your friends to listen to Go Solo Live. And if you want to be a guest or know someone who would make a great guest, reach out to me directly at jennifer@transformviatravel.com. Until next time, remember, go solo, not alone.